Okay, so we just went over the phases of the cardiac cycle. What I'd like to do now is point out a few things about the cardiac cycle, starting with the relative durations of systole and diastole. Okay, so what you're looking at here, represented in these concentric circles, is the inner circle is indicating what's happening with the atria during the cardiac cycle. The outer circle is indicating what is happening with the ventricles during the cardiac cycle. Okay. And what you can see is that we have for the atria, we have systole that lasts this long, and then diastole that lasts this long, ventricles, systole, it's going to last this long, diastole is going to last this long. And if we look at the sort of what's happening overall, you can see that each chamber, each set of chambers, right? So the atria are going to contract while the ventricles are relaxed. The ventricles are going to contract, and that's going to be a longer contraction than in the atria. Ventricles are going to contract while the atria are relaxed. And then we have a phase where both the atria and the ventricles are relaxed. Okay. Second thing I want to talk about regarding the cardiac cycle is the heart sounds. So you are probably familiar from listening to, love songs and things like that, that our hearts make sounds, right? Our heart, your heart beating next to mine, et cetera, right? So where do those heart sounds come from? Okay, what is making those sounds? What is making those sounds is the valves shutting. Okay, so the first heart sound, which we refer to as like the lub sound, right? So we kind of think of the heart sounds as lubbed up, right? The heartbeat lubbed up. The first is lub, right? That is the sound of the AV valve shutting. And I just want to remind you that is going to happen. So it happens here in the cardiac cycle. It's going to happen when the pressure in the ventricles exceeds the pressure in the atria, right? And that happens when we start to contract our ventricles. That's going to increase the pressure to the point where it exceeds the pressure in the atria. That's going to cause the AV valves to shut, and that is going to cause this sound here. Okay. Second heart sound, the dup of lubbed up, is caused by the semilunar valves shutting. So it's going to happen here in the cardiac cycle. And again, I just want to remind you that is going to happen when as the ventricles are relaxing, right? The ventricles are going to relax, the pressure there in the ventricles is going to fall, and at some point it's going to fall below the pressure that is in the arteries, okay? And that's what's going to cause the semilunar valves to shut and make that sound. Okay, last thing that I want to say about the cardiac cycle, I want to reiterate that the contractions are going to lag the electrical signals. Okay, so what you're looking at here is a lineup of what's happening with the ECG, the heart sounds, and the mechanical events of the heart, the cardiac cycle, during basically one or a little bit more than one cardiac cycle. Okay. And I just want to draw your attention to what is happening with the electrical signals and the corresponding mechanical events, right? So you can see here we have the P wave that starts, and then we have atrial systole, we have the QRS complex, and then we have ventricular systole, we have the T wave, and then we have ventricular diastole. Okay. Also just want to point out, since they're here, our heart sounds, right? Remember that our first heart sound is going to happen as the AV valves shut at the beginning of ventricular systole. And then our second heart sound is going to happen here, where the semilunar valves shut at the beginning of ventricular diastole.